democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court? And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, it's time out for you and me to stop running away from the wolf right into the arms of the fox, looking for some kind of help.
Malcolm X was a powerful African-American civil rights leader, minister, and influential figure in the fight for black empowerment and justice. Born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska, he overcame a difficult early life marked by racism, family separation, and incarceration. While in prison, he educated himself and converted to the Nation of Islam, adopting the name Malcolm X to represent the loss of his African heritage. As a spokesperson for the nation, he gained a reputation for his passionate, sometimes controversial stance on black nationalism, self-defense, and independence. His views evolved after a pilgrimage to Mecca in 1964, where he embraced a more inclusive approach to racial justice, advocating for global human rights. Tragically, Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965 in New York City. His legacy endures, inspiring movements worldwide to challenge oppression and advocate for equality.
Malcolm X was born in America during the Jazz Age, a time of rampant racism, a time when African Americans were treated as second-class citizens and had few opportunities for advancement. Early in his short life, Malcolm worked at a variety of menial jobs, eventually turning to a life of crime. He spent years in prison. Then he converted to Islam and became a voice of hope for many African Americans even today.
There has been much written and said about your departure from the Black Muslim organization. Could you tell us exactly why you did leave the organization?
Well, I didn't leave, number one. I was put out, no matter, and since there was no justification for them putting me out, they had to make it appear to the public that I left of my own volition. But it was in February of 1963 that Wallace Muhammad, one of the sons of Elijah Muhammad, pointed out to me that his father had a very serious moral problem, which he had kept a careful secret up to that point. But that when I heard about it, I went directly to Elijah Muhammad. We discussed it. He explained it. He even admitted it to me, as well as to his some of his other children. He discussed it with his other children. But when he gave me his religious interpretation or explanation of it, I accepted it. But about 5 months went by, and Wallace pulled me aside again and told me that his father hadn't changed. He was still involved in the same thing, and he was getting worse rather than better. And I think it had a serious effect upon me, subconsciously, if not consciously.
Personally ordered attacks upon you?
Oh, yes. In Cassius Clay, the brother that used to be the secretary to Cassius, or as Elijah Muhammad now calls him, Muhammad Ali Clay, was beaten in Boston recently, and this brother was a captain. He was one of the karate experts who taught karate on the entire East Coast, Eastern region, and he was in the inner circle. And he pointed out that in October, he didn't cease being a captain, but his influence or authority was placed beneath that of Clarence, the captain who's in Boston. Clarence was put over Joseph, and shortly after that, as Leon Amir testified, Clarence, the captain from Boston, and John, the captain from Springfield, Massachusetts, came to New York to carry out this so-called assassination. And they came to Leon looking for a silencer for their gun. Well, see, I understand all of it, but they parked half a block from my house here in the home of Alvin, who's also one of Elijah Muhammad's men, looking for a chance when they could, make their move. But thanks to Allah, they didn't get a chance.
Only Malcolm X's autobiography seemed to offer something different. His repeated acts of self-creation spoke to me the blunt poetry of his words. His insistence on respect promised a new and uncompromising order, martial in its discipline, forged through sheer force of will. All the other stuff, the talk of blue-eyed devils and apocalypse, was incidental to that program, I decided. Religious baggage that Malcolm himself seemed to have safely abandoned towards the end of his life. And yet, even as I imagined myself following Malcolm's call, one line in the book stayed with me. For he spoke of a wish he'd once had, the wish that the white blood that ran through him there by an act of violence might somehow be expunged. I knew that for Malcolm, that wish would never be incidental. I knew as well that traveling down the road to self-respect my own white blood would never recede into mere abstraction. So I was left to wonder what else I would be severing if and when I left my mother and my grandparents at some uncharted border. And two, if Malcolm's discovery towards the end of his life that some whites might live beside him as brothers in Islam seemed to offer some hope of eventual reconciliation, that hope appeared in a distant future, in a far-off land. Where were the people who would work towards this future and populate this new world? After a basketball at the university one day, Ray and I happened to strike up a conversation with a tall, gaunt man named Malik, who played with us now and again. Malik mentioned that he was a follower of the Nation of Islam, but that since Malcolm had died and he had moved to Hawaii, he no longer went to mosque or political meetings, although he still sought comfort in solitary prayer. One of the guys sitting nearby must have overheard us, for he leaned over with a sagacious expression on his face. "Y'all talking about Malcolm, huh?" "Malcolm tells us like it is, no doubt about it." "Yeah," another guy said, "but I tell you what, you won't see me moving to no African jungle anytime soon. Or some goddamn desert somewhere sitting on a carpet with a bunch of Arabs. No, sir. And you won't see me stop eating no ribs either. Gotta have them ribs. And pussy too. Don't Malcolm talk about no pussy? Now you know that ain't gonna work." I noticed Ray laughing and looked at him sternly. "What are you laughing at?" I said to him. "You never even read Malcolm. You don't even know what he says." Ray grabbed the basketball out of my hand and headed for the opposite rim. "I don't need no books to tell me how to be black," he shouted over his head. I started to answer, then turned to Malik, expecting some words of support. But the Muslim said nothing, his bony face set in a faraway smile.
I was born in America, in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm. Why do you use that? Well, easy, I can explain it. Well, just a moment. When you asked me about my name, if a Chinese were to come in here and say his name was Patrick Murphy, you'd know that somewhere along the line he got in trouble or fell by the wayside. Well, that's not a Chinese name. No. If a Chinese person has no business with an Irishman's name, if a yellow man looks absurd wearing a white man's name, it's even more absurd for a black man to have a white man's name. The Negroes, and you ask for an explanation, you can take my explanation. If you want it, take it the way I give it to you, or you don't want it. The Negroes in this country who have English names, those names represent the last slave master who owned their grandparents. It is not their name. It is the slave master's name. So when we become Muslims, sir, and we turn back toward our own culture, we reject, we cut aside completely those things that stigmatize us in this country. X also represents the unknown, and I think you would agree that the history of the black man, before he was brought to this country, you'll find that he came from Africa, which had a Muslim culture and Muslim civilization, a great part of it. And the Mali Empire stretched from the Nile River over to the shores of West Africa. That was a Muslim empire. The Moorish Empire was Muslim. The empires that existed in northern Nigeria were Muslim. Kano, one of the oldest cities in Africa, was a Muslim city 500 years before Columbus discovered America. So now when you ask me how, when you ask, well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is teaching the black people in this country that the only way that we can solve the race problem is not by forcing ourselves upon the white man, but by doing something for ourselves, teaches us also that we'll never have the incentive or the desire to do anything for ourselves until we first learn something about ourselves, about our past.
What Malcolm X did that drew so many people to him was he had an energy that was urgent and young, and I think he triggered a certain kind of action in people, a certain kind of self-esteem that I'm worthy of challenging the status quo.
Oh. Let me ask you, Mr. X, why did you visit Fidel Castro this morning?
Well, you have to understand it like this. Because of the climate that has been produced by the trouble in Africa, in the Congo, in Kenya, and other places, it has caused a great deal of tension in Harlem. And based on that, some representatives from the 28th Precinct a few weeks ago visited our restaurant, and they were discussing these incidents that stemmed from this tension, and they asked us for suggestions on some of the best ways to combat it. So we suggested that they, instead of condemning the leaders of these different nationalist groups, that they get all of them together at the Amsterdam News Office, where they have the 28th Precinct Community Council at the Amsterdam News Office. I think it's once a month. So that they took this suggestion, and at this meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago, a sort of a working unity was brought about by the editor of the Amsterdam News and Captain Noonan of the 28th Precinct and Patrolman Sosis, who handles, I think, the public relations or something or other. So it was suggested that working with just that element wasn't sufficient, but to get that element of leaders together with the civic leaders, the business leaders, and whatnot there in Harlem. So last Friday, a meeting was held at the Amsterdam News Office, presided over by James Hicks, the editor, and Captain Noonan and Sosis, and I think Inspector Whalen was there, and Lieutenant Seeley. Plus, there was Commissioner Dumpson of the Department of Welfare, and Dr. Alfred Morrow, the ex-commissioner, and John B. King, Reverend Dempsey, the mayor on Harlem, Dr. Allen, Nathan Friedman, and Vernell Pemberton, assistants to the superintendent of districts. There was Norman Saunders from the mayor's committee was there. And
I believe you, Mr.
Well,
X.
all right.
Go ahead.
I want you to know who was there so you'll know why I was in Fidel Castro's room. Since you want to know, we'll get the details. One of the first things that was brought up at this meeting was that there were many African dignitaries being brought to America during the UN session, and that these African dignitaries would want to visit Harlem. And the 28th Precinct, or the police department, was very concerned that there wouldn't be a repetition of the incident that took place when President Sékou Touré of Guinea was there. So they were asking for suggestions, and it was brought out that one of the primary reasons that this incident took place was because of improper representation on the committee or whatever it was that brought him there. There was just one element involved in the bringing of him there. Therefore, it left a lot of dissatisfied elements, and that those different ingredients caused a combustion of booing and so forth that was embarrassing. So it was suggested that a committee be set up. And this committee was supposed to be representative of all of the elements in Harlem. The nationalist elements, the Christian elements, the fraternal elements, the business elements, and so forth. And I was selected on that committee to be responsible for representing and welcoming any dignitary that came to Harlem. And when the meeting was breaking up, I asked Mr. Hicks about how to form the thing together, and he said, well, since your name was mentioned, you take the initiative in getting the others together. So then what night was that? Last night? Monday night. Monday night, we heard that Fidel Castro was coming to the Teresa, which was unbelievable.
He had a do bill that didn't work at the Shelburne.
Well, that's what somebody said, but I'm inclined not to go along with everything that I hear. So we went to the Teresa, and when we got there, the place was packed, jammed, and there was a lot of confusion and excitement. Now, I would like to state right here that one of the reasons that we were selected, or the Muslims were selected to be represented on any committee that had anything to do with representing any dignitaries to Harlem, the police department recognizes the fact that out of all of the groups in Harlem, those who are the most, you can't find a better disciplined group, or a more, I don't care what propaganda you say about us, you can't find a more disciplined group or a group that's more law-abiding than the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you can't find a group that's more cooperative with law enforcement officers. And so when this jam occurred there at the Teresa, the police officials, we could never have been in the Teresa had not the police allowed us there. They put out the reporters, they put out everyone, but they allowed us to stay there because Inspector Whalen was at the meeting when this committee was set up. And since he's responsible for all of the safety of the dignitaries, I think in the 10th Division, he let the committee that was selected stay in the Teresa Hotel.
Mr. X, I believe you. I still ask the question.
I'm giving you some background. I don't intend to leave anything out because I've had sufficient...
We've only got 2 hours.
I understand.
We have other guests, Mr. X.
All right.
Democracy is one of the precepts of your organization.
It is, sir.
Free speech for everyone?
Yes, sir. But you can take... see, I came because Mr. Kirschenbaum...
I've heard of him.
...told me that he wanted an objective report, and I don't think that whenever you are involved with a man as controversial as Dr. Castro and as controversial as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you don't just make statements that you don't explain, because people take them and twist them and make more out of them than what you mean.
I'm listening.
Now,
so you were at the Teresa.
So we left. After they had brought Dr. Castro in, we left. And then we received a call at our restaurant at 116th and Lenox. I got to get that plug in. Best restaurant in New York.
You'll pay for that, pal.
And they asked us to come to the Teresa Hotel that Dr. Castro wanted to see us. I was shocked.
Yeah.
And but we got the committee together and went back. When we went back with the Muslims, the police let us through their lines.
Right.
We were led by them up to the 9th floor and into Dr. Castro's room. And he greeted us very cordially, and he greeted us very cordially. We sat down. The room wasn't so big, and in fact, it was crowded with his entourage. And we were allowed to take in, I think, about 5, 2 Negro reporters, and a cameraman, and 4 of the brothers, and so that was.
In case of war with Russia or China, would you encourage your people to go and fight for America?
In case of war with Russia or China, would we encourage, you mean the black people in America, to fight in defense of America? Black people in this country have fought to defend America ever since America has been America, and black people in this country still don't have the freedom, the justice, and equality that they thought that they were fighting for when they were fighting to defend America.
But would they fight again for America?
Who knows what the black man who has now awakened will do. When the black man was asleep, he was anyone's tool. He was anyone's watchdog. He was anyone's hound dog, hunting dog. But today the black man in America is beginning to think for himself. And as he begins to think for himself, he begins to ask himself, what is he fighting for? And what has he gotten out of all of the fighting that he has already done? And as the black man begins to ask himself this question, then you'll find that many of them begin to wonder, what do they have to fight for? Now, as Muslims, we don't teach. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad doesn't teach us to fight or not to fight. He wakes us up and lets us know what's in store for America. And then anyone who wants to fight in defense of America, it's entirely up to them. But America's next battle will be against God himself.
But would you, Malcolm X...
I, as an individual, Malcolm X, would never fight for America.